Hello and welcome. In this session, we'll focus on preparing your Generation 1 students for success in Year 2 of the T-Level in Education and Early Years. Our aim here is to give you practical, confident strategies for delivering the occupational specialisms, whether you're delivering early years or assisting teaching. We'll explore assessment structure, performance outcomes, teaching strategies, and well-being considerations, all tailored for this important stage of the qualification. Let's begin with an overview of Year 2. Students will complete 3 assignments. These are labelled Assignment 1, 2 Part 1, 2 Part 2 and 3 for early years, and 1, 2 and 3 for assisting teaching. Assignment 2 Part 1 is unique to the early years specialism. It involves competency-based observations and can begin as early as Year 1 if an appropriate placement is in place and your students feel comfortable to do so. All assignments are mapped to the key performance outcomes. For early years, these are PO1 through to PO5, and for assisting teaching, it's PO1 to PO4. Importantly, Year 2 is where theory gives way to applied practice. Students need to demonstrate their skills in real placement settings, where performance, reflection, and professionalism really count. Please note, this recording is specifically for Generation 1 students. That's those beginning Year 2 in September 2025. If you're planning for the updated Generation 2 occupational specialisms, Year 2 specific support for Generation 2 will be released at an appropriate time to ensure you're fully equipped for delivery. So what's different in Year 2? Students move from studying educational theory to demonstrating effective practice in real-life placement settings. They'll be expected to carry out structured observations on children with accuracy and insight, adapt to children's individual developmental needs, apply safeguarding, health and safety and inclusive practice consistently, communicate professionally with staff, children and families, and reflect critically on their practice and use this to inform next steps. In Year 2, the expectations are applied, professional and rooted in real-world, early education and classroom environments. And your role changes a little too. You're still their tutor, but also their coach. This is the time you can really contextualise classroom activities to marry up with students' placement experiences. You're supporting students to embed routines, refine communication, and build confidence in a professional role with real responsibilities. The slide on screen now outlines the Generation 1 performance outcomes, or POs, that form the foundation for assessment and practice in Year 2 of the Education and Early Years T-Level. These outcomes define the knowledge, skills and behaviours students are expected to consistently demonstrate in placement settings and during controlled assessments. They're not just assessment criteria, they're the core of Year 2 learning and development, shaping how students interact, plan, reflect and grow into capable professionals. Next, we'll explore practical teaching strategies to help students develop fluency and confidence in each of these outcome areas. On this slide, we've outlined a range of teaching strategies to support each of the 5 performance outcomes for early years. You won't need to deliver all of these at once. Instead, these can be introduced gradually and revisited throughout the year. For example, for PO1 and PO2, you might focus on practical strategies like role play, video reflections, or planning group tasks that support play and development. As students move into planning, safeguarding and partnership skills, scenario work, simulations and peer feedback tasks can help bring those expectations to life. Feel free to pick and adapt what works best for you and your students. The key here is giving students repeated supported practice to build confidence in these areas. Next, here are some suggested strategies to support students working towards the performance outcomes for assisting teaching. We'll not read through every point here, but you'll notice each PO is supported by practical classroom-based approaches. For PO1 and PO2, you might use planning tasks, simulations, or peer collaboration to help students understand how to support and adapt learning. For PO3 and 4, place more emphasis on safeguarding, inclusive practice, and responding to individual needs. So perhaps scenario cards, SEND case studies, and differentiation challenges, as these are all useful tools. Again, feel free to adapt or build on these. The aim is to help students experience what the outcomes look and feel like in practice. Bringing the performance outcomes to life in an early years or classroom setting is a great way to work towards the performance outcomes. In Year 2, we're not just teaching content, we're shaping habits, routines and reflective behaviours that align with professional expectations. That means our teaching needs to feel like the assessments, structured, purposeful and grounded in real-world practice. You could start by modelling key routines from placement, such as arrival, story time, transitions or meal times. You could narrate what you're doing and why, so that students learn to link practice with intention. You could use checklists and visual aids to rehearse professional behaviours, like hygiene routines, safeguarding procedures or planning preparation. Repeat them until they feel automatic, as this is what builds confidence and consistency. Peer observation is also a powerful tool here. You could have your students take turns watching each other in small group activities, or role play using structured prompts to give feedback. This builds their ability to notice, reflect and improve, and it mirrors how they'll be assessed. Make regular written reflections a part of your routine. A simple structure: what did I notice? What did this tell me? And what might I do next? This helps students move from description to critical thinking. And don't be afraid to simulate mistakes. You could show an example with a missing safeguarding step, for example, or weak engagement, and ask the students, what went wrong? How could it be improved? And what would you do differently? These strategies aren't just about passing assessments. They help students think, plan, act and reflect like real professionals, and this is what Year 2 is all about. This slide gives you a snapshot of the occupational specialism assessments for early years educator and assisting teaching. There are 3 assignments in total for each route. The structure looks similar at first glance, but there are some key differences to be aware of. For both routes, Assignment 1 and Assignment 3 are externally marked. Assignment 2 is placement based, but this is where the routes start to differ. In early years, Assignment 2 is split into 2 parts. Part 1 is the competency-based observations, marked internally and then externally moderated. And Part 2 is the structured observations, which are also internally marked and externally moderated. In assisting teaching, Assignment 2 is a single structured observation assessment. Again, internally marked and externally moderated. Assignment 1 is a planning task in both routes, and Assignment 2 takes place in real placement settings, observing students' performance. Assignment 3 is where the contrast is clearest. Early years educator students complete observation of children in settings, while assisting teaching students complete a written case study analysis. Just another quick reminder, these assignment titles have changed for Generation 2 students. What we're looking at here only applies to students beginning their second year of study in September 25. Now let's take a closer look at each assignment. Assignment 1 for early years is a structured task where students must design purposeful activities that meet the individual needs and development stage of a child or group of children. For this assignment, students will plan 2 educational activities that support areas of learning in the early years foundation stage. It assesses how well learners understand child development and curriculum frameworks like the early years foundation stage, plan inclusive learning experiences, and reflect on how their activity supports well-being and progress. To help students prepare, you could use sample or real-life child profiles to practice planning. Break down early years foundation stage areas of learning and link these clearly to activities. And then encourage reflection, not just on what they planned, but why and how it supports the child's development. Finally, modelling good planning really matters here, so give examples, build in peer feedback, and help your students rehearse explaining their thinking in their writing. Assignment 1 for AT is a structured task where students are asked to plan an educational activity that supports pupil progress. It needs to be appropriate to the pupil's stage of development and learning needs. Students need to show they understand curriculum aims and how to plan purposeful support that enables learning. It's also about adapting tasks to meet a range of needs and understanding the classroom context, including their own role as a teaching assistant. To help students prepare for this task, you might use real sample pupil profiles to plan against curriculum objectives. Practice identifying where learner support fits within a lesson aim. You could introduce templates that include prompts like group size, learning goals, or adaptations. You can show your students strong examples of support plans and break down what makes them really effective. And again, just like EYE, build in opportunities for learners to reflect. Think about how their planned support contributes to pupil engagement and progress. Again, this is all about building confidence in structured planning. Not just what to include, but why it matters. Assignment 2 Part 1 is specific to early years and takes place in industry placement. It focuses on professional behaviours, communication and safe inclusive practice, all mapped to the Department for Education competency criteria. It can be started in year 1 of the T-level and be ongoing throughout. It will be internally assessed and externally moderated, so do make sure you're familiar with the criteria document. You can find this on our qualification page under the Assessment Materials section. It's also worth noting that there's new documentation for competencies for students following the Generation 2 specification, which we'll look at in more detail later in the academic year. To prepare for this assessment, you could use NCFE paperwork to track competencies clearly, plan regular placement observations, and run rehearsal tasks for things like hygiene routines or managing transitions. And build in reflection so learners can link what they do to what's being assessed. This is about showing consistent, confident behaviour, not just once, but over time. It's worth noting here that well-established relationships between placement settings, tutors and assessors really does help students get the best out of their time at placement and ensures they'll be afforded all of the opportunities they need to cover all of the criteria. This is the second part of Assignment 2 for early years, the structured observations. It involves 3 planned and observed sessions carried out in placement, and each one is assessed against set criteria focused on planning, delivery and reflection. Unlike Part 1, this is conducted within a set assessment window, so preparation is important. You can find our key dates for assessments on the qualification page. It's internally assessed and externally moderated, so again, do make sure you're familiar with the structured observation criteria. You'll find them in the Assessment Materials section on our qualifications page. You can support your students for this assignment by helping them complete structured planning forms in advance of each observation. reviewing the observation criteria with them and using walkthroughs or role plays to practice. Encouraging them to justify activity choices with links to curriculum or development aims will really help too. Giving clear feedback using the assessment grid and using reflective prompts to guide their post-observation evaluations is really good practice. Now let's look at assignment 2 for assisting teaching, the structured observations. Just like in early years, it includes 3 planned and observed sessions in placement. Each observation is assessed against a set of structured criteria, focusing on how learners plan, deliver and reflect. These observations are carried out within a fixed NCFE assessment window, so preparation and timing are key. They are internally assessed and externally moderated, so accuracy and consistency in evidence collection are vital for both pathways. You can support your learners for this assessment by helping them complete planning forms in advance, reviewing the observation criteria and rehearsing expectation through walkthroughs or role play, encouraging them to justify their activity choices, linking back to curriculum aims, and giving clear feedback-based support after each observation using the NCFE marking grids. It's also worth using reflective prompts to guide their thinking in the post-observation review. All of this should build learners' confidence and readiness to demonstrate their support skills in a real classroom. Assignment 3 for Early Years Educator focuses on developing student skills and observing young children in real-life early years settings and reflecting meaningfully on what they see. It's designed to deepen understanding of how children learn and how they can respond effectively through observation. Part 1 is observing and reflecting on real situations. For this part of the assignment, students will carry out 3 observations in early years environments with a specific focus. They'll evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their own practice and skills in carrying out each of the different observation methods. They'll then suggest ways that they could engage with continuous professional development, or CPD, to improve their own observational practice and skills. Part 2 is evaluating the observation methods. In this section, students will be given example observations and asked to do the following. Identify and describe 3 different observation methods. Evaluate the purpose of each using examples to demonstrate their application and relevance. And analyse the observations to draw meaningful conclusions about the child's development, interests and potential needs. They'll then use this analysis to suggest next steps, including practical, developmentally appropriate educational activities or opportunities that could support the child's ongoing learning. To support students developing these skills, you could incorporate short focused observation tasks in real or simulated settings. Use structured templates such as sticky notes, snapshot observations and narrative formats to make them familiar. Model how to link observations and developmental stages, drawing clear connections between behaviour and theory. You could scaffold reflective practice using prompts like, what did I notice? What does this tell me about the child? And what could I do next? Encourage peer discussion and feedback too, to build confidence and deepen analysis. This assignment is key in developing students' understanding of child development and how they can adapt and respond to meeting the diverse needs of children in early years settings. Assignment 3 for assisting teaching takes the form of a case study analysis. Students review classroom scenarios and are asked to evaluate how teaching assistants can support pupils' needs effectively. They'll need to demonstrate an understanding of barriers to learning, identify suitable interventions and reflect on the outcomes of their decisions. It's about analysing what works, why and how. They'll examine case studies and discuss the impact of factors that may be contributing to the child's behaviour and the safeguarding concerns these factors may raise. They'll explain strategies they would use to support the child's well-being, safety, resilience and development, helping them to make informed and positive choices. They'll describe how they would communicate and work effectively with both the child and the class teacher to promote engagement and support independence. They'll explain how they would review and adapt activities and resources to meet the individual needs of the child and support their progress. They'll describe anti-discriminatory practices they would implement and outline ways to promote the child's social inclusion within the learning environment. To support this, you could use mock case studies that reflect a variety of needs, like SEND, behaviour, or English as an additional language. You could scaffold written responses using prompts like what's the barrier, what support could be used, and what might work, and why. Model high-quality responses and support comparison or different strategies in a group setting. You could encourage group discussion here to explore different perspectives. And use tools like diagrams, infographics or grids to help students map the needs to appropriate support. This assignment builds students' analytical skills and helps them to reflect on safeguarding and welfare in the context of their role in teaching and learning. The timeline on screen now gives a suggested structure for delivering and preparing for the occupational specialism assessments across the year. In Term 1, Part 1, the focus is on laying solid foundations, revisit safeguarding, routines and professional behaviours. This is the time to begin placement logbooks if you use one, and build habits like weekly reflections. Prioritise communication, inclusive practice and observation techniques early on. Then, in Term 1 Part 2, you can shift to planning principles using real or simulated child or pupil profiles. This is also a good point to run a mini version of Assignment 1 and introduce the structured observation frameworks your students will use later on. Term 2 Part 1 is about building confidence. Use this time to run full mock assignments for Assignment 1, Assignment 2 Part 2 or Assignment 3, depending on the route. Scaffold reflections, build in professional discussions and give structured feedback using the assessment criteria. Finally, in Term 2 Part 2, students complete their assessments. This is also when you'll finalise placement sign-off. Of course, this is just a suggested structure. Feel free to adapt it to suit your learners, placements and delivery model. Now let's talk about assessment fluency, the kind of fluency that goes beyond just knowing the task. It's about understanding what a success looks like, how to demonstrate it, and how to communicate it clearly. In Year 2, that fluency needs to be visible across all of the assessments. So how can we build it? Start by colour-coding tasks by performance outcome. If students can see which PO they're practicing and where it appears again in an assessment, they begin to recognise the patterns. It's about making the implicit explicit. Next, you could make observation a normal part of class life. You could introduce weekly mini activities, short, structured practicals, where students perform a task whilst others observe using simplified criteria. Then you're not just rehearsing the assessment, you're almost training students to think like assessors too. You could use peer review to build assessment language. Ask learners to comment on each other's work using marking scheme phrases, such as this shows performance outcome 2, because, or you could improve this by. This helps them make sense of how evidence is judged. Finally, scaffold written and verbal rehearsals. You could use sentence starters like, the challenges with this approach are, the theory linked to this is, or a possible improvement could be. Let students rehearse aloud, then reflect on how to translate that fluency into their writing. Assessment fluency isn't about rehearsing a script. It's about building clarity, confidence, and competence. When they can speak and write like professionals, they're more ready for the task. They'll understand how to succeed. It's important for us to be mindful that students often feel the pressure, especially around planning and observed tasks. That's why it's so important to build a culture that values progress over perfection. You can reinforce this by creating space for mistakes and ask your students what went wrong, what could I try next, and make that a normal part of learning. Use verbal walkthroughs before assessments to reduce anxiety and support processing, and let your students rehearse their thinking out loud. You could scaffold written reflections and plans with sentence starters and peer dialogue, as this helps students organise their ideas and hopefully feel less overwhelmed. Before formal tasks, set up a calm classroom environment, whether it's quiet, tidy spaces, or simple mindfulness routines. You can be guided by your students for what works best. Remind your students that working with young children can be unpredictable. We're always aiming for progress, not perfection. And lastly, when students feel unsure, validate their feelings, then link them back to resilience and real-world professionalism. Emotional confidence matters just as much as technical skill. This slide is just a reminder that there's lots of support available. Don't forget that for students beginning Year 1 in September 25, they'll be following the Generation 2 specification, which is on a different qualification page. Please make sure you're on the correct page when searching for support documents. There will be additional support for the new specification as we move towards the first cohort of second year students. But for your Generation 1 second years, please do make use of the Chief Examiner reports, student exemplars, upcoming CPD sessions, and our YouTube playlist. It's all there to help you and your students. In addition to the resources I mentioned on the previous slide, we've created 2 dedicated assessor Padlets, one for early years and one for the assisting teaching route. These Padlets can be accessed by scanning the QR codes on screen and are updated by the provider development team. They're designed to help you stay informed, inspired and connected as assessors. Make sure to bookmark one or both and check back often, as it's an evolving toolkit for assessors working within the T-level in education and early years. To support collaboration and shared learning around the Generation 2 T-level, we're also inviting you all to join the Education and Early Years community of best practice if you haven't already. This is an online space hosted by NCFE where providers can connect with peers across the country, share ideas, resources and delivery tips, get updates, inspiration and guidance directly from the provider development team. By joining, you'll gain access to a dedicated Microsoft Teams space where you can ask questions, join discussions and stay informed throughout your T-level journey. To sign up, simply scan the QR code on screen or use the link and complete the short form. This is a really great way to stay connected and supported. Before we finish, I'd really appreciate it if you could take just a few moments to complete this short feedback form. Your insights are incredibly valuable because they help us improve the content, delivery and usefulness of these recorded, on-demand resources. Simply scan the QR code on screen now to get started. Thank you in advance for taking the time to share your thoughts, and we hope to see you at our upcoming events. Thank you for taking the time to watch this recording, and we hope to see you all at our upcoming events.